Welcome to PSA's Let's Squawk About It. Today we're discussing a topic that's been affecting the poultry industry for a while, the most recent strain of the highly pathogenic avian influenza. Our guest is Chanelle Taylor with Cargill, Canada. Chanelle, welcome and tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much. So I'm the veterinarian for Cargill, Canada. I work primarily with broiler birds in the field and hatchery and processing plant. And I manage a little bit of the breeder side of things as well, although a little less so than the broilers. And basically, I take care of all of the disease-related parts of our system, as well as animal welfare throughout the whole, from hatchery straight into processing.
Excellent. So you are definitely the person we're excited to talk to about this kind of stuff. So since we are talking about the avian influenza, why don't you start off by telling us what do we know about this strain?
Yeah, so avian influenza is a viral infection that's very highly contagious among birds. It's found in both domestic poultry as well as wild birds. So wild birds can be anything from raptors, hawks, eagles, that type of thing, to water birds, ducks, geese, Canada geese, specifically cranes and swans. The virus that we're dealing with in 2022 here is an H5N1 highly pathogenic influenza strain. And basically what that means, it's just the viral type. There's subgroups to the virus that determine how pathogenic or not that it is, and whether or not we see things like mortality and clinical signs associated with it. So this one is quite a highly pathogenic strain. We see a lot of different symptoms in different types of birds. So this year's strain's been a little bit different than previous years that we've seen it, such as 2015, I think was the last time we saw it. And this year we're seeing it in all kinds of birds, from turkeys to wild birds to ducks, commercially and wild as well. Some breeders, broilers, backyard flocks, even fancy breeds, which has been a bit concerning as well. We're seeing neurological signs in some of the species of poultry, such as tremors, lack of coordination, falling off to the side, unable to walk, mainly in ducks and geese and a bit in turkeys as well. And what's a little different this year in terms of clinical signs is that we're also seeing it in some songbirds. So blue jays, cardinals, that type of thing, which is a little different. We don't normally see it in that area of the world. We're also seeing rapid sudden mortality and what's called cyanosis in turkeys and broiler chickens, and drops in egg production and fertility in breeder flocks. We're also seeing some very random kind of symptoms in other types of poultry, mainly fancy breeds, such as swelling of the head and neck, lack of energy, coughing, sneezing, a little bit of diarrhea, and some bleeding into the skin of the legs and the face of the birds. So that's been a little different than previous years, but definitely shows us that, across multiple different species, we can see a variety of different clinical signs.
It's interesting that it's affecting songbirds, and it sounds like pretty much every type of bird is being affected by this strain.
Yes, so far we've both the US and Canada has sort of found it in all different types of birds. I know in the US, they've seen some eagles, bald eagles with it. We had a red-tailed hawk here in Waterloo region where I live that had neurological signs and passed away, unfortunately, and was confirmed to have AI as well. And we've had a few people that have noticed, backyard bird feeders. They've gone outside and found, a dead pigeon or a dead blue jay, submitted it, and it's had AI as well. So that's been a little more concerning because we know that part of one of the main routes of transmission of this disease is wild birds. So knowing that we can see it in not only, our waterfowl, which usually is our main source of concern, but also in these songbirds can definitely be concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first heard about, the avian influenza and concern for backyard flocks, the first thing I read about was waterfowl. But
Mhm.
we've got so many different types of species being affected by this, so like songbirds and stuff. I mean, you could have a bird infected and eating out of a bird feeder in your backyard next to your backyard flock. It's scary.
Yes. And one of the things, and I know we'll get to it later, but one of the things that has been put out there, even in the last couple of weeks, for people who have especially backyard flocks, because, they love to roam the property and eat things off the ground, has been just take down your bird feeders. Don't be encouraging any wild birds to come by your property if you can avoid it, just to stop that communication between your backyard birds and anybody who might be flying through the way and comes in for a little look-see, right?
Yeah, definitely an important message as we start to enter the warmer side of things in our region. People want to do those outdoor activities, but it's important
Yes,
to keep this in the back of your mind, maybe pause until it's a little safer.
definitely. I mean, we have about 17 confirmed flocks here in Canada and 229 confirmed cases in the US. So a little bit different scale wise. I mean, it's been across 29 different states in the US, about, I believe, at least 4, if not 5 provinces in Canada now. And it's kind of everywhere. And right now with this warmer weather, like you said, this is prime migration patterns for everybody, for all your snow geese, all your Canada geese. Everybody's coming back this way to Canada.
Everyone's
So
on the move.
yeah, everybody's on the move. So, they're coming for the warm weather, and unfortunately, in some cases, they bring AI with them.
Let's change gears just a little bit and talk
Mhm.
about the avian influenza and its effects on human health. And I just want to bring this up because I know in the past, with different strains of avian influenza, there was a big concern in impacting human health.
Yeah, so avian influenza is considered a zoonotic disease. So that means it can be transferable from animals to humans. Prefacing that with, it is very rare for humans to catch avian influenza. In total, there's been about 750 cases of humans with avian influenza, H5N1 and other strains. But H5N1 tends to be one of the more pathogenic ones that does hit people, just in the last 20 years. So we're not talking big numbers, but it's definitely possible. In a lot of those cases, the people who have been infected have ended up being people who are in direct contact with sick birds for long periods of time. So your poultry workers that are usually in other countries, in a lot of the Asian countries, they live on site with the birds. And so they'll be in and out of the barns all day, every day, and they're getting prolonged contact with everything from feathers to ventilation and all of that. So we've seen quite a few in those cases. We've also seen some people that may live at home with their chickens, and their chickens actually reside inside with them. And if those birds get sick, then obviously you're around them and you're holding them and handling them and cuddling them and things like that. And generally, we see people end up with AI if those birds are sick. The symptoms we normally see in people, it's more like just a regular human flu. You get, the cough, the sore throat, fever, muscle aches, that type of thing. In some cases, there has been a respiratory component to it that ends up with, pneumonia, which can be quite deadly for some people. And I know I looked it up before here just to kind of have an idea of how deadly sometimes this can be. And the CDC did put out a statistic saying about 60% of people who have been considered infected in the past have actually passed away from avian influenza. So even though it is rare to get, and even though it is very difficult to jump from animals to humans, it is possible. And when it does happen, it is quite severe.
Keeping in mind that it's possible, but knowing the rarity and then, of course, what past cases, how they've been exposed repeatedly, it sounds like it's not just like a one-off chance, one interaction with one sick bird is you're immediately going to get ill from it. It sounds,
Yes.
a little bit more rare than that.
Yeah, a little bit more rare than that. And I mean, having been out into the commercial industry, especially, many of us wear masks when we go into barns where, there's a large amount of birds present, which is also going to be something that we're always going to recommend for human health is masking, because the ventilation in there is going to whip feathers and everything else around. With backyard poultry, obviously a couple of birds in your backyard, you're probably not wearing a mask, which is very understandable. But, in some cases we have had birds that have ended up with respiratory signs and said, hey guys, maybe either wear a mask if you're going to bring your bird indoors, take care of it just for your own safety, but also, try not to have that bird in and around your face as much as possible. And usually those cases end up being something that's not avian influenza, obviously, but it's always, human health is always definitely something you have to keep on top of your mind, because there are things that can jump from animals to people.
As I mentioned in the beginning of the segment, we know this is impacting the poultry industry. So I wanted to talk about what type of challenges and difficulties the industry is facing with avian influenza.
So it's been, impact has been really, really widespread for both the US and for Canada. It's hit multiple poultry species, which means multiple industries, because as we know, turkey industry, chicken industry, a little bit different, although we all kind of work together, just different industries. And it's also hit commercial flocks and backyard flocks. So it's been definitely something that anybody who works in any facet of small or large scale poultry is definitely seeing. Most of the impacts have been from depopulation of flocks, unfortunately, as we all know. Once they become positive, the flock with a highly pathogenic strain, the flock has to be depopulated. Restrictions within zones has also created a lot of issues placing birds and shipping birds to processing. And we've also seen a lot of trade impacts across different countries. So between Canada and the US, but also internationally to some other countries, if you're a company that ships product worldwide. So to kind of get into a little bit more detail about that, we've been dealing with egg and chick shortages due to losses from breeder flock. We've dealt with some meat shortages, mainly, again, due to the chick shortages. We don't have enough chicks, can't grow enough birds, can't process enough meat. There's been some loss of income from farms and hatcheries and processors alike. We're all seeing it. We're all kind of trying to mitigate it. It is a little different in Canada because we are a non-integrated system, and the US is fully integrated, so it is a little bit different, but across the board, I think everybody's been seeing both financial and service interruption for sure. We've had producers that have had to take on the cost of cleaning and disinfecting after their barns have become infected and their flocks have been depopulated. Lack of people has been a big one. And I mean, I hate to say it, but even with COVID, already sort of, keeping the amount of people working at a lower level, we've now got to deploy a lot of people to these sites to test birds, to check the birds. And when we get the test back, we have to deploy people to depopulate the flocks. Different people have to go and clean and disinfect, between the processors, the companies, the farms, and the CFIA, it's a lot of people involved. And when you have multiple sites, especially all at the same time, we only have so many people to go around. So that's been a huge sort of speed bump that we've had to navigate for sure. Permitting to move poultry and poultry products in and out of zones, which happens a lot here up in Canada. Once we have a zone, it's about a 10-kilometer radius around the farm. So anything coming in or out of that zone that is considered poultry or a poultry related product, you have to have a permit to be able to move it. So that's been interesting to navigate. And one of the sort of interesting aspects has been when genetics companies get hit. So their flocks, their breeding stock, and a lot of those genetics are imported or kept, for very specific lines of poultry, mostly commercial, but also some smaller hatcheries that have done fancy breeds, fancy flocks. And when you wipe out your breeding stock, you got to start from zero, and that takes time. definitely takes time. And the last thing that's been something that's sort of top of our mind as well has also been the mental health of farmers and CFIA and anybody really dealing with an avian influenza outbreak. It's a very difficult situation when the birds get sick. It's jarring, you're not expecting it. And then not only does the farmer now have to wait to hear if they're positive and CFIA gets involved, but also if they are positive and they do need to be depopulated, it's a huge mental health impact from everybody involved. Nobody wants to see that happen, right? So that's definitely been wearing some people down, and we're seeing a huge impact on that side of things. And we've got a lot of good mental health systems in place to, provide support for that for sure. But it definitely does take a toll over time.
Those are good points to bring up too, because, it's not just the poultry that are affected. I mean, all the people that care for them, and especially after coming out of, we're still in a pandemic, really. It was already a stressful past couple of years, and then these workers working in this industry are hit with something else. It's not it's not fun.
It's not fun, no. And I mean, these are producers that have dedicated their life to, making sure that they're producing happy, healthy birds, for our consumption. And when your flock is sick, nobody feels good about that.
I think we've already touched on this a little bit, but in order to end on a happy note, what are some of the things that are being done to mitigate the spread? I mean, obviously we can look at past avian influenza outbreaks and how those were handled, and we can kind of track what's going on with this one. But in doing so, what kind of things have you seen that are being done?
Yeah, so we've had enhanced biosecurity measures put into place. So everything from movement of poultry to movement of people to, making sure that anybody coming on and off the farm is properly using PPE. We've enhanced what type of PPE we've used, things like spraying tires and making sure that, the cars and the trucks are coming clean and they're leaving clean. So we're not transferring things in between farms has been key to the main area of mitigation that we've tried to impose. They've put into place zoning, as I mentioned before, to ensure that the areas around the premises are being able to be watched closely for signs of any issues. There's been surveillance testing within the zones as well to make sure that any of the birds in the vicinity are healthy and negative. And if they are turning up positive, where do we go from there? Pre-shipping testing is done for slaughter to make sure that the birds are healthy enough for food consumption. And there's also been just some strict procedures put into place around how and what samples we take from birds that we suspect may have AI, and how we transport them to the lab, so that if you're on site and you think that AI may be a differential, that you're safely and appropriately not only handling the samples for yourself, but also for the lab, so that they know it's coming in and their people can be protected, and that we can make sure not to be spreading it while we're transferring it. We've also put into place a lot of education around both commercially and backyard flocks. So we've done multiple webinars for backyard and small flocks, daily updates from CFIA, and we've done some education around signs to look for, when to call your vet, education to the vets to look, what to look for, how to test, when do you think that AI is on your list, all those types of things. And that's meant to sort of bring awareness, make sure that people know what it is that we mean when we talk about AI, and what it is they need to look for. So if they suspect, hey, I think this might be what's going on, or something is not right in my flock, what do I do? The first person they're going to call is their vet, and then we'll help them handle it from there. There's also recently in Canada, there's been a animal health control area order by the Chief Veterinarian of Ontario that they put into place to stop the hosting of shows, swap meets, fairs, auctions, and any educational displays where birds are brought together and commingle. Because as we know, a lot of people bring their own pet birds, or they bring birds they want to sell. And those birds interact with other birds and other people who may own farms as well. And then potentially could be a spreading event where one bird's sick. Now you've got dozens of farms that could be sick. So that's been something that was put into place just because of the rapid spread of this virus. And with the severity that it's taking down flocks, we just thought, hey, you know what? We've just put it on hold for a couple of months. Let's see where we get to. Generally in the warmer months, June, July, when it gets nice and hot outside, the virus dies off. And we tend to stop seeing cases, and, they can reevaluate at that time. But that's been a big help in reducing contact transmission between birds.
And that's good to know too, to kind of give people an idea. Unfortunately, you don't want to stop doing some of these things because they're enjoyable, but to kind of have in the back of your mind, June, July, summer months in North America, this is kind of when it dies down. Just hold off until then. There's always about a light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. And, we're not saying never and forever. We're saying just not right now. And you know what? At the end of the day, really all we're trying to help people protect their birds and protect their flocks. I would hate to see somebody bring one bird from, a flock of birds that they quite cherish, and they do, to a swap meet, and then come home and their whole flock goes down, right? Nobody wants that. So, don't take the risk. Not worth it.
Just hold out a little longer.
Little longer. Give us a few more months.